Now, let's proceed to the last lesson part of our lesson for this week. Use available tools for monitoring hydrometeorological hazards. Ano ba yung mga tools na kailangan natin gamitin, especially for us, natural citizens, okay, para mapagandaan ang anumang klaseng hazard, okay, na coming from hydrometeorological. The Philippines Atmospheric Geophysical Astronomical Services Administration, or PAGASA, is the country's premier agency mandated to provide protections against natural calamities and utilize scientific knowledge as an effective instrument to ensure the safety, well-being, and economical security of all the people for the promotions of national progress. So, ang trabaho talaga ng PAGASA is to provide protections against natural calamities. Actually, it's not only to provide, this is to create awareness. Okay? Kasi minsan hindi natin mapipigilan ang bagyo, pero maaari natin tong mapaghandaan. Mapoprotektahan natin ang sarili natin sa isang klase ng hazard, okay? Na may daladalang disastrous effect kung ito ay mapaghahandaan natin. Okay? So, maaari natin hindi man natin ito maiiwasan, pero maaari natin mapaghandaan. Paano ito mapaghahandaan? This is through the help of PAGASA. Okay? That's why it is the premier agency in the country. Okay? Para magbigay sa atin ng information para mapaghandaan natin ng isang paparating na hazard. Since the Philippines experience an average of 12 to 20 typhoons a year, a large portion of the DRRM, or Disaster Risk Reduction Management budget, is being used to address issues in concern of pertaining hydrometeorological hazard. Sa lahat ng mga possible disaster, okay, o hazards na dapat paghandaan dito sa Pilipinas, ang ang DOST PAGASA ang may pinakamalaking budget na natatanggap. Okay? Bakit? Kasi nga, dito tayo pinaka-prone. Yung earthquake, yes, dapat yan pinaghahandaan. Pero ang earthquake kasi, hindi naman natin siya ganun ka-often na nararanasan kumpara sa mga bagyo na talagang very destructive at talagang yearly nararanasan natin. Kaya nga, yan ay may pinakamalaking budget na binibigyan ng DOST sa kanyang mga galamay. Okay? O under or strand. Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 defines disaster as a severe disruption of community societies' day-to-day functioning that involves extensive physical, financial, material, and ecological losses, and its devastation surpass the capacity of the affected people and the community to deal with utilizing its own resources. So according sa ating Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act of 2010, ang disaster daw, ito daw yung pinaka-severe disruption, pinakamalalang disruption na maaring makasira sa functions ng mga tao at ng ating economy, okay? And including our environment. Disaster are frequently described as a result of a combination of exposure hazard. So again, ang hazard, ito yung nagdadala ng disastrous effect. So, walang disaster kung walang hazard. Okay? So, ang disaster is just a cause effect of a hazard. Conditions of vulnerables that are present and insufficient capacity or measures to reduce to cope with the potential negative consequences. As part of the capacity building of the individual and the community, public information educations on floods and other related topics at national level were conducted. Okay, having enough knowledge about the system will be greatly to reduce the possible losses and increase the capability of the individual to cope the effects of the hazard. The number one task of the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction Management, okay, so kung maalala nyo sa school, ako ang assistant school Disaster Risk Reduction Management. Okay, ang ating lead coordinator is si Sir Dindo Carlos. Ako yung kanyang assistant, okay, na coordinator. So sa school pa lang, tignan niyo, meron na tayong disaster o DRRM officials or representatives. So from school, meron na tayong DRRR, tapos meron din tayong BDRRR or the Barangay Disaster Risk Reduction. Then from barangay, meron din tayong tinatawag na MDRRM, which is the Municipal Disaster. Tapos meron din tayong PDRRM, Provincial. Tapos RDRRM, Regional. And meron tayong tinatawag na NDRRM, National. Buong Pilipinas na yon. Okay? So, as part of the capacity, sabi nga nila, part ng disaster risk reduction management is to educate people. Sabi nga nila, ang number one trabaho namin, okay, kaya kasama ako doon, kasi isa ako sa mga coordinator, is to educate. Ang turuan namin kayo, i-educate namin kayo about the possible risks, okay, na dala-dala ng bawat hazard na maaaring dumating sa lugar natin, particularly in our school. Ako, ang task ko talaga is to give warning, okay, sa mga possible hazards na meron exposed or vulnerable ang eskwelahan natin, particularly the San Luis National High School. Okay, so from school, magde-delegate yan up to national. So that is our main objectives. Listening to weather forecast is one of the way to prepare the typhoons for other hydrometeorological hazards. So paano natin napaghahandaan ng isang hydrometeorological hazard? Ito yung pagkikinig natin lagi sa mga forecast na ibinibigay sa atin coming from Pag-asa. Pag-asa is the lead government agency in charge of forecasting the weather. Since the most common hydrometeorological hazard in the Philippines experience are typhoons, various warning systems were made. So lalo na dito sa Pilipinas, kapag ordinary days, twice silang nagbibigay ng kanilang weather forecast between 4 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Pero kapag merong nakapasok na, kapag sa Philippine Air Force responsibility natin na may nakapasok na typhoon, nagbibigay sila ng kanilang updates, ng forecast updates every 4 hours. So, classification of typhoons dito sa Pilipinas, okay, meron niyang 5 klase. Kapag less than or up to 61 km per hour, tropical depression ang tawag. 62 to 88 km per hour, tropical storm. 89 to 117 km per hour, severe tropical storm. 118 to 220 is typhoon. At ang pinakamalakas na bagyo sa lahat ng classification of typhoons is kapag yung super typhoon, ito yung pinakamapinsala sa lahat ng typhoon. Kapag ang kanyang hangin ay may daladalang greater than 220 km per hour, that is super typhoon. Example niyan ay mga bagyong Yolanda, Ondoy, at Pedring, and including Ulysses. Okay, na na-experience natin last year.